So it's not that we should replicate Google, but we should think about Walmarts, about IKEAs, about the properties and the mazes that we create to get people to come in and enter whatever process we want them to go through.
I mean, there are a number of ways, I think, to answer your question, or one of the questions you asked, there are a number of ways to actually get that second video or that second piece of information out there. There's lots of different ways to do it. My view in this is, I don't want to be kind of pithy, but the simple answer is innovation, right? Companies have to be innovating in their marketing plan, and they have to be. Like it's not. I don't think it's an option anymore. I mean, you have to be trying and building models that allow you to try a lot of new things. And again, I work for Google. I can assert and attest to the fact that Google, this is the cornerstone of Google's business. But it's a very conscious effort. It's something they've planned to do, and it's something they invest heavily in. To take advantage of the medium, to take advantage of the pace of change, it's very difficult to make those big bets. Google doesn't make those kind of big bets. They simply are constantly innovating and iterating. I would just argue that a lot of other organizations have to do that.
We no disrespect. We can't use Google as a model because you got a vast war chest of cash, and you have the ability to track the story.
Go ahead. I agree. Yeah. I use it as an example. But I think that there are many, many things that a lot of organizations can do differently. That if Google's over here and other organizations are here, I'm not suggesting every other organization has to move to complete, making innovation the cornerstone of their business model. But I think they have to come forward. I mean, businesses have to start experimenting.
I think you also have to take risk. I mean, let's face it. If you're GM or Chevy or whoever it was with that Tahoe campaign, you have to have the guts or the balls or whatever to launch something like that and just let whatever happens happen, instead of trying to micromanage the campaign the way you used to. I think a lot of what social media involves is a loss of control, and that's a very difficult thing for people who've been used to controlling the message to do.
And I think a loss of control with tension, so you need to create the good, the bad, and the ugly. In some form.
But I think Jonathan's point about innovation is the problem of speed, both in responding to crises and opportunities, but also in accelerating your organization.
Right. Flexibility.
And so granted, Google's not always the best example to give. I think the Globe and Mail and the CBC, where obviously Matthew has more of an influence in that respective organization versus I do, are two old dames that are, I think, taking on more risk, are trying to innovate, are trying to do things. I'm very critical of the CBC in that I wish they'd done it 10 years ago, and even now wish they'd do it quicker. And Matthew probably has the same critical attitude towards the Globe, but I think both brands are going to be here 10 years from now, even with government funding, even with reduced advertising, because their followers love them. CBC listeners and viewers are zealous in their following, and the Globe, I think, has a similar core audience that will be with them until they die. Unfortunately, in both cases, that death might be sooner rather than later.
So do we have any questions from the audience? Because we could obviously just continue to have a food fight. So is there any questions? Or should we just keep...
All right, I got one for Jesse. So Jesse, what is the subtext? What's this all about?
I resisted using that word a few times, I think the subtext is power. Who has power? And how that power is formalized and recognized. I think we flippantly say that the people have the power, yet Tony clearly identifies, and I agree with him, that brands still have a lot of power. There's still a lot of money in power. I think the question is we're reconfiguring, and we don't really know who's at the table and what the stakes are and who holds the cards. And I think until that's settled, like Tony flirted with us at the beginning of saying he was going to ask us the question of what would we do if we ran Google. And my answer to that would be, well, I would lobby for a ministry of the internet, because we don't get it, and government's usually in the job of helping us get it, and they don't get it. So if we had a ministry of the internet whose job was to figure this fucking thing out, I think we'd be making progress.
Okay. Do you have a Twitter question?
Actually, nothing so far. That's sad, really.
I'll ask you one.
So what would you do if you ran Google?
I don't see Google, needing any help from me. I think Google is sort of is I mean, most people don't have a clue how Google makes any money anyway, right? And it just seems to be, super capitalized and making tons of dough. And I'm pretty sure you make your money off, cents and pennies of advertising that are floating around the internet. It's that old. If you can sell enough of anything, you'll sell 1 million of anything, you'll make a lot of money. So, but the fact is, they give away stuff that people have been charging you for forever, which is screwing with everybody else's economy. So if Google can, give me free software to use, that I don't need Microsoft anymore, fantastic, right? Great, I'll use it. I'm not exactly sure what I'm giving up to be able to use that, but still it's free and it's valuable to me. So I think Google's kind of doing the right thing and kind of stays out of people's way, and has never, in my opinion, has never had one of those Facebook moments where it's been sort of, announced that I get to keep all your data and you have no say about it, and I'll sell you all sorts of stuff, and I'll give away all your secrets to the advertisers because you're getting a free social network out of it. And I don't think has there been a Google rebellion against something or other than holy shit, Gmail's down today?
There's been little. Actually, when Gmail first came out, there was concern about Google's going to read my mail.
Yeah. But that's a geek. That's geek.
It is,
right?
Yeah.
Like the people who get the free shit are like, oh, free email. This is awesome. But then there's people who really look into what you're really giving up, and that's and thank God for Cory Doctorow, because
if I were
he
running
does the heavy
Google,
lifting.
if I were running Google, and this is a sort of side point, I would change the share structure, because the share structure, which a lot of people aren't familiar with, is multiple voting shares, which is, I think,
Very Canadian.
Very Canadian, right. A lot of our media companies have that structure. I'd much rather see Google have a share structure that allows anybody to have a say in the running of the company, instead of just 2 or 3 guys.
Tony, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'll comment first, and I'll apologize directly to you because it's a bit of a slam at the industry. So I'll ask you. Make a comment.
Turn the cameras off, please.
If you could use the phrase train wreck, that would be great.
Conversation. It sounds to me, from what you guys are talking about, that a lot of the change that's going on is actually a reversion to the way it used to be. Prior to mass media, we didn't have these enormous brands that were selling us crap that we didn't need and spending a lot of money doing it. Prior to then, we had people talking to people, and your vendors and the people that you bought things from were local.
Mm-hmm.
You had local farmers, you had local mechanics, everything was local. The internet seems to be the advent of that again because of the connectivity. We're all capable of being global and local at the same time. So my question with that context is, do we really care that brands exist in their current format at all? Because brands as they exist now in our world are what the companies are telling us they are about. Whereas what brands used to be, and pardon me for saying what they should be, is what people actually do. What you're known for doing, not what you're known for saying. Because people spend an awful lot of money telling us what they are. Whereas those YouTube videos and all these other things that we're seeing, well, you can tell us whatever you want. But in this connected world, we now know, like in our local markets, we know what you really are. So your brand now is exactly what you deserve. It's not what you necessarily want. It's not necessarily what you want to pay for. But it is, in the end, much different than it was prior to mass media.
So I'm getting lost. So what's the question?
My question is, do we really care?
Is that good?
Other than you and advertising businesses, do we really care that there's an erosion of brands as they used to be in this whole mix?
Can anybody answer that?
Going back to...
Go ahead.
I think that's an excellent point. I mean, to me, you're talking about something that's effectively democratization of the consumer culture or whatever. So instead of a sort of top-down, here's what we're going to push to you using Brittany or whatever, and then that'll be a brand and you'll want it because we tell you want it. You're getting things that come up from the grassroots. You're getting people saying, hey, I'm using this thing, it's really great, and then that spreads, and then lots of people like that thing.